I want to clarify in the clearest terms that our critiques should not be taken as a personal affront to any particular sheikh or majlis reciter. The aim is never to go after the person of anyone, but rather to ask critical questions about a general mindset and a thought process that has unfortunately become predominant within our community. And the mindset that I'm referring to is the medieval Safavid Akhbari mindset, the black Shi'ism. This way of thinking goes way back. Al-Allama Muhammad Baqir al-Majlisi, he was a big proponent of this weak, passive, and weak evidence-based kind of Shi'ism. In some of the books, he saw this story about Syed Ali al-Hussaini, that it is mentioned that the riwayah of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam was recited on the 10th of Muharram. Man dharafat aynahu ala musab al-Hussaini walau mithla janahi al-ba'udah ghafar Allahu lahu dhunubahu walau kanat mithla zabad al-bahri. That whosoever's eyes overflow with tears over the tragedy of al-Hussein, even if the tears that come out of the eyes are the size of the wing of a mosquito, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive all his sins, even if they are similar to the foam of the ocean. So Allama al-Majlisi writes, he says, there was in the majlis when this was being recited a jahil. Now obviously the Akhbari Safawids would see any enlightened person as a jahil. Any critical thinker would be seen as a jahil. So he says there was this jahil, yadda'i al-ilm, who claimed to be knowledgeable. He objected to this hadith and said, laysa hadha bi sahih. He said this hadith is not sahih, it is not authentic. Wal aqlu la ya'taqiduhu. And the intellect cannot accept these kinds of exaggerations. Then the majlis ended, and then he goes on to the dream sequence comes in. Okay, that's where he plays the drum roll. And the dream sequence comes in. فَرَأَى فِي مَنَامِهِ كَأَنَّ الْقِيَامَةَ قَدْ قَامَتْ. He saw in his dream that the qiyamah has happened. People have been gathered. اشتد الحار. It was severely hot and he became very thirsty. And finally at the House of Kausar, he sees two men, one woman. Their nur is coming out and they are wearing black clothes even in the hereafter. And they are sad and weeping. And so he asked, who are these? And he's told, this is Muhammad al-Mustafa, Aliyun al-Murtada, Fatima al-Zahra. And then he says, why are they wearing black? And why are they crying? It's because it's Yawm Ashura. On the day of judgment even, the Yawm Ashura is continuing. This is the day of the Maqtal of al-Hussein. He says, I tried to go near to Sayyidatun Nisa Fatima. And I said, oh daughter of Rasulullah, I am thirsty. He says, Sayyidah Fatima looked at me with a frown, with a grin in her eyes. And she said, أنت الذي تنكر فضل البكاء على مصاب ولدي الحسين. You are the one who used to reject the fadl, the virtue of crying over the tragedy of my son Hussein. And then he says, انتبهت من نومي فزعا. So I woke up from my sleep terrified and I did istighfar and I regretted. And basically this is the dream that Al-Allama al-Majlisi uses to authenticate this narration, that if you cry even this much, then this is the reward that you get. So this is what I was referring to. The mindset that we're dealing with is found in the Akhbari books, in Bihar al-Anwar. When we critique this passive and counterproductive version of Shi'ism, please understand that there is nothing personal that we have against it. Rather, we are simply against it because this is not the deen that we find in the Quran. This is not the Shi'ism that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam wanted. And we are seeing within the Hawza, there is a sea change and a new trend in the attitude and thought process of the highest level Usuli scholarship. If you look at their commentary on Bihar al-Anwar, you will see that they have actually challenged this whole black Safavid Akhbari narrative, and they have tried to put forward an Usuli interpretation or reinterpretation of all these anecdotal evidence that these people use. When they comment on this narration about how whosoever sheds tears on Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, even the size of a mosquito, then Allah will forgive all his sins, even if they are equivalent to the foam of the sea. Look at their footnote. They write here, Tawahham al-Juhal. The ignorant have misunderstood these narrations to have an unrestricted application covering every circumstance and time. And all the hadith which talk about crying over Imam Hussein, visiting his grave, and there being lots of thawab and reward, he says the ignorant people have misunderstood these narrations. How have they misunderstood them? They think that these narrations have unrestricted application, meaning they apply to every circumstance and every time. And they're applicable even today. Some have thus strongly rejected them, arguing that if these narrations were authentic, they would undermine the foundation and principles of the sect, leading to the neglect of religious obligations and rulings, and abandoning prayer and fasting. They point out that we see sinners and wrongdoers relying on their allegiance and love for Hussein, and they're weeping for them to justify committing sins and engaging in heinous crimes without ceasing their oppression, misguidance, and injustice. Therefore, these narrations are nothing but fabrications by extremists who have inserted them into the reports of the Ahlul Bayt to promote their corrupt goals and their view that loyalty to the Ahlul Bayt is merely love for them, not submission to their their authority, commands, and prohibitions, which is the correct understanding of loyalty. Others who merely narrate a hadith without putting any thought into them and without reflecting over them have taken and interpreted such narrations in an unrestricted sense, claiming that the narration, whoever weeps for Al-Hussein or makes others weep or pretends to weep will attain paradise. So he says those people who narrate a hadith, they have taken and interpreted narrations like this, whoever weeps for Al-Hussein will attain paradise. They have taken them to think that they are applicable and valid for everybody, even in our present time, regardless of who they are. They then attack the deniers and rejectors of this narration. Because now there are scholars who deny such narrations. They say these can't be authentic narrations because they don't agree with the Quran, they don't agree with the Sunnah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't give you Jannah for merely pretending to weep, because pretending to weep is something even a munafiq and a hypocrite can do. So what, Allah will put hypocrites in Jannah? So basically, scholars have attacked narrations, and scholars internally, again, we are not talking Wahhabis or Salafis. This is in 12 Imami scholars are attacking these kinds of narrations and saying, Baba, these don't make sense. And those people who believe in this hadith, they then attack the deniers and rejectors of this narration and its claim, accusing them of disbelief. Or you attack them of khuruj min al-madhab, leaving the sect, or lack of ma'rifah, you are a muqassir, lack of ma'rifah, ignorance of the Imam's true status. So if you reject a hadith like this is the labels that you get. The editors of Biharul Anwar are lamenting when you try to challenge narratives or ask critical questions, you get accused of disbelief, apostasy, leaving the madhab, lack of ma'rifah, all of this. He says then when these same people, when they are challenged and cornered with objections that they have no response to, they resort to interpreting the hadith out of its intended meanings. So they change the whole meaning of the hadith and they start adding things that no, whoever weeps for Al-Hussein, but then, the weeping introduces a change and this and that. I said, Baba, none of this is mentioned in the hadith. Clearly, the one who composed this hadith wanted people to just cry or pretend to cry. He was not concerned about them transforming themselves, or else he would have included a clause. Then when they're challenged, they resort to reinterpreting the hadith. Or this is plan A. When that fails, gymnastic fails, plan B is what? They provide stories, Maulana, and dreams and visions. Baba, I saw in the dream, Bibi was very angry with you. Then the learned editors continue. They write, the truth is that among these narrations, there are those which are sahih, and there are narrations which have authentic chains by Imami standard. Others are hisan, they have good chains. Others are di'af, they are weak chained. And overall, they are well attested, and even mutawatir, they are mass transmitted. So you have a whole chapter on the bab of Thawab al-Buka al-Hussein. So this gives the editors the impression that they are mass transmitted, and they cannot be dismissed or reinterpreted because they are so mass transmitted. He said, however, they were issued at a time when commemorating Al-Hussein, weeping for him, visiting his shrine, lamenting for him, and reciting poetry about him were acts of denouncing wrongdoing. It was like the biggest nahi anil munkar. At the time Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was martyred, and shortly thereafter, doing all of these things meant that you were openly defying the Banu Umayyah. These acts were intended to undermine the Umayyad foundation and to condemn and deter people from following their Quran rejecting and Prophet rejecting ways. Therefore, the Imams encouraged the Shia to engage in this sacred struggle by promoting Al-Hussein's name and reviving his cause through whatever means possible, such as mourning, eulogizing, visiting his grave, and weeping for him. In contrast, the Umayyads sought to extinguish Al-Hussein's memory, forbade visiting his shrine, and prevented mourning and weeping for him. Those found doing so would be captured, exiled, killed, and their homes would be destroyed. Because of this ongoing conflict between the supporters of religion and the supporters of disbelief, Caliph Al-Mutawakkil destroyed Al-Hussein's shrine, leveling it to the ground and flooding it with water to extinguish the light of God. Yet God will perfect his light even if the disbelievers dislike it. Whoever wept for Al-Hussein, lamented for him, or visited his shrine in that context did not do so merely out of grief or azar, as mere symbolic solidarity or as consolation for the Ahlul Bayt, but as an act of active resistance against the enemies of the religion and as a means of jihadan fi sabilillah, striving in the way of God, enduring the hardships, trials, exile, and persecution they faced. Therefore, it was right for God to reward those who fought in his way and grant them paradise without reckoning. In such a time, similar to the time we saw 20 years ago in Iran, okay, they're talking about the pre-revolution period, no one would weep for Hussein or recite eulogies for him except those who were truly faithful believers, people of piety and certainty, because of the torment and persecution involved. Not every sinner and drinker would do so, leading to objections against the narration. In those circumstances, the sinners were aligned with the Umayyad authority, siding with the rebellious factions, spying on the households to suppress the Shia and prevent them from commemorating Hussein. They even stormed the house of Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salam after hearing the cries of woe and weeping from his home. However, in times, now this is where they give their verdict. Do these ahadith apply today? In times where there is no struggle between the Ahlul Bayt and their enemies, like our present time, the commemoration of Al-Hussein and weeping for him does not carry the title of jihad or struggle in the way of Allah. Instead, those who remember Hussein are met with praise and admiration. They are even financially compensated and rewarded for it. And those who weep for Hussein are honored and respected, being told that they have done a commendable deed, and they are offered refreshments and treats. Thus, because there is no jihad, there's no struggle now involved in weeping for him, there is no promise of paradise also. Today, they are arguing, these editors of Bihar al-Anwar, today there is no struggle in weeping for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein because it's no longer the Umayyad period. Today, if you cry, you get tabarruk and fatiha and refreshments and treats and niyaz. In those days, if you mentioned the name of Imam Hussein or tried to speak in favor of him or you shed tears for him, you would get into trouble with the Umayyad government. So they say that because there is no struggle today, there's also no promise of paradise. So let the rebellious and defiant sinners and wrongdoers weep. They are accountable for their evil deeds. God is not deceived about who should enter his paradise. He will distinguish the wicked from the good and will pile the wicked on top of one another, keeping them all together into hell. These are the true losers. This entire passage that I have presented, you will find it volume 44 of Bihar al-Anwar, page 293 all the way to page 296. The sad thing that we have been lamenting is that instead of embracing these new usuli researches, the traditional member, in reaction to this, they are doubling down and they're actually increasing and accelerating their weak propaganda work.
Mirza Shirazi jab faqih kiye the, कि he's telling him in his dreams, yes, Mirza Shirazi, I want to come back into this world. He says, Habib ibn Madahir, for what would you want to come back into this world? He says, હું ત્યારે ત્યાં ગયો તો મને ખબર પડ્યું કે જે માણસ ઇમામ હુસૈનની મજલિસમાં રડે છે અને મસાયબમાં અઝા મનાવે છે, ખુદાના નજદીક 100 શહીદોનો સવાબ મળે છે, પણ મને તો ફક્ત એક શહીદનો સવાબ મળે છે. I want to come back into this world and weep over Hussein in the middle of majlis like you and me, so that I get the sawab of 100 shaheed, not just one shaheed.
A dream is being narrated from the mimbar where Janab Habib ibn Mudahir al-Asadi, the great companion of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, comes in a dream and he is saying that I want to return back to this earth. And he is among the shuhada of Karbala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have placed him in the highest positions with Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Yet the claim that is being revealed in the dream is that Habib ibn Mudahir is regretting being over there with Imam Hussein. He wants to come back to this earth to be with the Azadars of Imam Hussein. Why? Because he has learned that crying for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam gets you the thawab and the station and rank of 100 martyrs. Whereas Janab Habib, wal-iyadhu billah, is regretting the fact that he only got the thawab of 1 martyr. Whereas the Azadars today, who are sitting in the Imam Bargah and the Zakir himself, they are getting the thawab of 100 shuhada. Yani their thawab is greater than the 1 thawab that the individual shuhada of Karbala received after laying down their lives. But as we have always been saying, every claim, ya akhi, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, what did they teach you? Luzum wa ard al-hadithi al-Quran min haythu al-muwafaqa wal-mukhalafa. The necessity of presenting every hadith to the court of the Quran to see whether it agrees or whether it contradicts. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam says, Kullu hadithin mardudun ila al-kitabi was sunnah. Everything is to be referred back to the book and the sunnah. And every hadith that does not agree with the book of Allah, then it is worthless embellishment. So this is what the Imams taught us for hadith. And what about dreams? Should dreams not be checked against the book of Allah? Allah says, the qa'idun, those who sit back, they do not fight on the battlefield. The believers who sit back can never be equal to those who actually participate and perform the jihad and the struggle on the battlefield in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with their possession and their persons. Allah has graced those who wage jihad with their possessions and their persons by a degree over those who sit back. And those who participate in the physical struggle in the battlefield, their reward is way higher than the rank of those who sit back. He says those believers, especially there might be some believers who sit back because they suffer from some disability. Allah has promised a beautiful outcome for them as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has graced those who wage jihad over those who sit back with a great reward. And what will that great reward be? In the form of darajatin minhu wa maghfiratan wa rahmatan. Them superior in terms of the darajat, their ranks are higher, they will get more forgiveness, they will get more mercy. And yet from the mimbar, the complete opposite is being promoted. You can just sit down in the Imam Bargah, so long as they are crying over Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the thawab of 100 mujahideen and shuhada just for sitting down and crying for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Yani this is, I'm surprised that this we al-Islah are having having to refute and to counter this? Where are the traditional scholars? This is insulting to the As'haab of Abu Abdullah. From a sectarian traditional perspective, this is so insulting and demeaning to them.